Revelation chapter 13. The dragon stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads. On its horns were 10 crowns. Wow. Folks, we got a crazy chapter that we're going to be looking at here. Revelation chapter 13. The revelation of Jesus Christ to the Apostle John, revealing the things that must soon take place. We're going to dive into some of these symbols, some of these crazy language that we're going to be seeing here and walking through what can this mean and how should it affect our lives. Remember, the blessing of the book of Revelation are for those who hear it and who heed the words written in it. In this section, we will not be so much looking at what we're supposed to heed and things that we're supposed to do, but rather we're going to be hearing the warning about what is to come that should motivate us to action. Let's jump right into it, folks. We're going to have to skip around just a little bit here in order to put this passage in context. But first, let's read it, and then we're going to be jumping over to read some passages over in Daniel, as well as just trying to understand the pictures that are happening here. As I said, the dragon stood on the sand of the sea, which is actually chapter 12, verse 18. And I saw a beast coming up out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads. On its horns were 10 crowns, and on its heads were blasphemous names. The beast I saw was like a leopard. Its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, and great authority. One of its heads appeared to be fatally wounded, but its fatal wound was healed. The whole earth was amazed and followed the beast. They worshipped the dragon because he gave authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who is able to wage war against it?" The beast was given a mouth to utter boasts and blasphemies. It was allowed to exercise authority for 42 months, which is 3.5 years, right? It began to speak blasphemies against God, to blaspheme his name and his dwelling, those who dwell in heaven, and it was permitted to wage war against the saints and to conquer them. It was also given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. All those who live on the earth will worship it. Everyone whose name was not written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slaughtered. If anyone has ears to hear, let him listen. If anyone is to be taken captive, into captivity he goes. If anyone is to be killed with a sword he will be killed. This calls for endurance and faithfulness from the saints. That's the first beast. Second beast. That was a beast from the sea, which is the Antichrist. Now we're going to see the second beast, which is the beast from the earth, which is his prophet. Then I saw another beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns, like a lamb. So the previous one had 10 horns. This one has 2 horns, which is more. This one's less powerful. It has 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercises all the authority of the first beast on its behalf and compels the earth and those who live on it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. It also performs great signs, even causing fire to come down from heaven to earth in front of people. It deceives those who live on the earth because of the signs that it is permitted to perform in the presence of the beast, telling those who live on the earth to make an image of the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. It was permitted to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast could both speak and cause whoever would not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And it makes everyone, small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on his right hand or on his forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, the beast's name, or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, because it is a number of a person, or a number of man. Its number is 666. All right, folks, this is a loaded chapter. We are covering the mark of the beast. We're covering Antichrist. We're covering his prophet. We're talking about the death of the Antichrist and his resurrection. We're talking about the length of the tribulation period. Yikes, we got a lot of stuff to cover. One of the first things that we need to recognize is once that this is happening in the context of the book of Revelation. We had just covered in the previous chapter the dragon. The dragon, who represents the devil, right, was cast out of heaven, is cast out of heaven, from what we can see, right at the 3.5-year mark into the 7-year tribulation. And once he gets down to earth, he is going to try to do several things. He's going to try to persecute and destroy Israel, which is the woman that we saw before. Secondly, he's not going to be successful because the earth is going to somehow protect Israel. And we are going to see that he is going to then try persecuting those who keep the commands of God and hold firmly to the testimony about Jesus, which are Christians. So he can't just destroy Israel, so he's going to also try to destroy all Christians. And this is what he's going to try to accomplish in the last 3.5 years of his time on earth, because he knows his time is short. He's going to try to destroy as much as he can. He is not going to do things directly. He is going to use his servants, the Antichrist, the beast from the sea, and his false prophet. They are going to establish this world worship of the Antichrist and the dragon, and they are going to do signs and wonders. They are going to fake Jesus, hence the name Antichrist, by him dying and being resurrected. And not only this, but the whole earth is going to be amazed. We saw before that when the prophets of God were killed, that everyone on earth that's worshiping the beast is going to exchange gifts because they're so glad that the prophets have finally been killed. Here we see that when the beast is killed, they will mourn, and then on top of that, they will then be amazed when he is resurrected. So a lot of things to take in here. Let's flip over very quickly over to Daniel. We need to understand that in the context of this writing, that John is assuming that you are very familiar with Daniel, because the book of Daniel has all these prophecies that speak to this. First imagery that you're going to, Daniel has this vision of this statue, right? That verse 42, chapter 2 of Daniel, verse 42. We'll just briefly read this so you can kind of hear what's going on here. Speaking of this idol that he or statue that he sees, there's going to be a head of gold, shoulders of silver, then bronze, and then the feet are going to be like clay and iron. And that the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly fired clay. Part of the kingdom will be strong and part will be brittle. You saw the iron mixed with clay. The peoples will mix with one another, but will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with fired clay. In the days of those kings, speaking of the confederation that we'll see that we're seeing over here, in the days of those kings, the God of heavens will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed, and this kingdom will not be left to another peoples. So that's what we see, is that we're moving from these kingdoms to an everlasting kingdom. So the fourth kingdom is clay mixed with iron. And then verse 44, that we see that this is going to be replaced by a new kingdom. So the Antichrist kingdom will be replaced. Flip over to Daniel 7:7. And we are seeing the second vision, which is these beasts that represent the kingdoms of the earth to come. And this is the final beast, which is referring to the Roman Empire, which we have been living in since the time of Christ. There's the Roman Empire, the First Reich, and then you have the Holy Roman Empire, the Second Reich, and then the third being the unspeakable one, World War II, right? And this will be apparently kind of like the fourth that we're looking at. 7:7. After this, while I was watching in the night vision, suddenly a fourth beast appeared, frightening and dreadful, incredibly strong, with large iron teeth. It devoured and crushed, and it trampled with its feet whatever was left. It was different from all the beasts before it, and it had 10 horns. Wait, 10 horns? And verse 8, while I was considering the horns, suddenly another horn, a little one, came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. And suddenly in this horn there were eyes like the eyes of a human, and a mouth that was speaking arrogantly. So you see the same language. We're talking about the 10 horns once again of this kingdom. Excuse me. And this little horn, which represents the Antichrist. And then chapter 7, skip down to verse 20. I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on its head, and about the other horn that came up, before which 3 fell. The horn that had eyes, so he's asking like what the interpretation of this is. The horn that had eyes, a mouth that spoke arrogantly, and that looked bigger than the others. As I was watching, this horn waged war against the holy ones, and was prevailing over them until the Ancient of Days arrived, and a judgment was given in favor of the holy ones of the Most High. For the time had come, and the holy ones took possession of the kingdom. Holy ones referring to like saints, right? Believers. Verse 23, this is what he said. The fourth beast will be a fourth kingdom on the earth, different from all the other kingdoms. It will devour the whole earth, trample it down, and crush it. The 10 horns are the 10 kings who will rise from this kingdom. We believe that to be future. So in the future, these 10 kings will rise. Even though we're living in this kingdom, the clay and the iron of this kingdom, it will turn to all iron at the end. It says, another king, different from the previous ones, will rise after them, subdue 3 kings. He will speak words against the Most High and oppress the holy ones of the Most High. He will intend to change religious festivals and laws, and the holy ones will be handed over to him for a time, 1, times, that's +2, right? And half a time. Time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years, or 42 months, or 10,000 or 12,060 days, that says. All these are pointing to a literal 3.5 years. But the court will convene, and his dominion will be taken away to be completely destroyed forever. Our king will win. If you want to understand this passage better, please do go back and read all of Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7. Because that will give you a great idea of what's going on. Also, you can refer back to chapter 12 of Revelation to understand kind of what I already kind of just set forth. Like I said, the strongest argument, I think, for the fact that this is going to happen within a literal 7-year period is the fact that how often these halves of the tribulation period are referred to in so many different ways. 3.5 years, 42 months, 12,060 days, times and a half a time. That's like, why would you keep repeating in different ways the same kind of time period? If it's symbolic of 12,600 years, then you wouldn't go back and say 42 months or the half a times. You wouldn't go back and say 3.5 years. You wouldn't keep saying it differently because it messes up all the imagery and the symbology, right? The only real way forward with that, I think, is just to believe that it literally means a 7-year period of 3.5 years and 3.5 years. All right, so the first beast comes up, and it has these 10 horns, which clearly refers back to Daniel, right? A beast, 10 horns, and we're seeing this blasphemous names. The beast was like a leopard, its feet were like a bear's, and its mouth was like a lion's mouth. Now, the second vision that Daniel had the 4 beasts: lion, bear, leopard, and then this iron beast. So once again, that's referring back to Daniel 7. The dragon gave the beast his power, his throne, his great authority. And then the Antichrist is going to receive a fatal wound. He's going to die, and he will be resurrected in front of the whole world. That is going to be crazy. We see these 7 heads could potentially refer to 7. They refer to 7 hills around the capital. Rome was a city that had 7 hills. It was always said to be 7 hills. So maybe that's what the 7 heads refers to, is like the center of the kingdom will be Rome physically. Or it could mean like Jerusalem. It's hard to say what exactly the 7 heads are. Or potentially the 10 horns, 3 get uprooted, and that takes it down to 7, possibly. That's more my speculation on that last one there. But we see that there's blasphemy happening here. The beast will lead everyone to worship him, and then his false prophet is going to lead them to worship him. He's going to utter boasts and blasphemies. And he's going to have exercise authority for the 42 months. And verse 7, he is permitted to wage war against the saints. He's going to have this one world government, right? And he is going to he's not going to have a nation to declare war on, other than he's going to attack Israel, but he's not going to succeed. He is then going to wage war against all believers, all followers of God. Verse 8, all those who live on the earth will worship it, and everyone whose name is not written from the foundation of the world in the book of life of the Lamb who was slaughtered, right? But we see this interesting passage here in verse 10. What does it say in verse 10? If anyone is to be taken captive, if it's your destiny to be taken captive, you will go into captivity. If it is your destiny to be killed with a sword, you will die from a sword. This calls for endurance and faithfulness from the saints. Basically, what God's destiny is for you, you will not be able to avert. I don't care if you stockpile all sorts of freedom seeds and food to the ceilings for the great tribulation to come. If you prepare out the wazoo and you go through that, you will not be able to avert your place. Like, what's going to happen to you is going to happen to you. And so what you need to do is focus in on being faithful in the hard times. I think this is a good word for people who get very focused on preparations or prepping, and or getting so focused on getting ready for hard times that they don't take that verse into context, which says that if it's your time to die, you're going to die. If you're going to go into captivity or be imprisoned, that's going to happen to you. You can't hide from it. And then the second beast, starting in verse 11. This is the one that comes out of the earth. It's a lesser one. 2 horns instead of the 10. It's going to speak like the dragon, like Satan himself, right? Exercising authority. And he's going to get everyone to worship the first beast. Great signs and wonders, call fire down from heaven. That sounds quite literal. We already saw the 2 prophets are going to call down fire from heaven. I'm sorry, but no movement in the history of the church since Jesus Christ has called down fire from heaven. It just hasn't. Why would it say call down fire from heaven unless it means calling down fire from heaven? If you're like, well, it just means they're going to preach really strongly, then why wouldn't it say that? Right? That's my opinion on the matter. If you disagree with me, it's a hard book, and plenty of godly people do disagree. But that's my position, and that's where I'm going to say I believe it means. And then he's going to deceive the whole earth. He's going to create this idol, right? This idol is going to speak, and it's going to kill anyone who doesn't worship this idol. And then the mark of the beast will come. A lot of people speculate that the mark of the beast is already here. It's this thing or it's that thing. It's a pat on the shoulder. It's, barcodes. It's cell phones. It's, all sorts of crazy stuff out there. Maybe it's YouTube. What is the mark of the beast? Well, first we're going to see this idol. We're going to already have revealed to us the Antichrist. A lot of things are going to happen before this happens, and then what we see here is that the people will already know the Antichrist is going to be waging war against the saints. You're already going to have picked a team. It isn't going to be catching you by surprise. You're going to know one way or another that this is the big deal, and you're going to have to make a choice between the mark of God or the mark of the beast. And when that time comes, pray that you have the courage and the strength to go with God, because this is an eternal decision, it looks like. All right, folks, that's the synopsis on the mark of the beast, something that is going to be obvious, and you will know exactly what it is, and it won't happen until after the revelation of the Antichrist, after the war against the saints, after many of these signs and wonders, and after an image that is going to talk and destroy people who do not worship it. All right, guys, if you want to check out some other videos to study Bible passages, check out these playlists here. Otherwise, I'll see you later. God bless you all. Have a great week.